All right. So on my end, I'm going here on the back end. I'll get us connected to Facebook, and then I will let everyone in from the waiting room. And we got 20 people, 21 people in the waiting room. They're piling in already.
Wow, Brad, you got a big draw today, buddy. Everybody knows you.
They're coming to see your show.
No, that's not true. Seriously, Brad, you have done incredibly well. You're a Cortland grad, but you've done really well by leaving Cortland. Doing a lot of good stuff, All these Cortland grads have been doing good stuff.
I'm trying to hire some Cortland grads.
There you go. Love that. Love that. Oh my goodness. I love all these names. I'm seeing some names.
Right.
We have from the past.
Full house today. If you would introduce yourselves in the chat.
Dr. LeVay, one of our originals. I love it.
Welcome all. I'm Melissa Bittner, assistant professor at CSU Long Beach, and we have a very exciting day today. I'm first going to introduce Deb Shapiro, who is our NCPEID president. She's going to give a warm welcome to everyone who's joined us today.
Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. It's finally doesn't conflict with classes for me, so I'm thrilled to be able to join you for this today, and welcome everybody. I hope the beginning of the new semester is going smoothly for you all. And those of you in Texas and the West Coast who are dealing with the snow and ice, I hope you're all staying warm and safe. So thank you all for joining us and being part of our group, our NCPEID family.
All right, today on the agenda, we are going to hear from Tim Davis, who is an associate professor at SUNY Cortland. And we will also hear from Brad Weiner, who is the APE coordinator at Fairfax County. On a personal note for both of them, though, they both have very, very exciting springs. Tim's and his wife are expecting a baby like any day.
Tomorrow, February 2nd.
That's amazing.
Tell me about it.
So Brad definitely knows that if Tim gets the call, he's got this solo. And then also exciting news as well from Brad, who's got a big upcoming wedding. Coming up in April, yay! So kudos to both of you. Thanks again for finding time in your busy schedule to join us and present. Today, the presentation is going to be about the Adapted Physical Education National Standards and how to get your CAPE certification to become nationally recognized in adapted physical education. As always, this is going to be, it's currently live on Facebook through the NCPEID Facebook page. It will be uploaded to NCPEID YouTube and will be an upcoming episode in the What's New in APE podcast. And a big thank you, as always, to the members of our NCPEID membership subcommittee, Danielle Musser, the Colorado APE conference director, Andy Pitchford, Oregon State University, Heidi Ambrosius from Moreno Valley USD Unified School District, and myself, and then of course Lainey Case from Chico State University. So with further ado, I'll pass the baton over to Tim and Brad.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. This is a very humbling kind of experience to see all these names. This is, in the words of Claudine, this is all about family and creating just a bigger family. And I feel incredibly humbled, like I said, to be here to talk to you. My career is focused on service and teaching and working with kids and sharing that information with a very deep passion with teachers around the country. And the national standards really gave me that platform, and I will forever feel obligated to Luke Kelly, and others. But I look across, I see some of these names. I see Barry LeVay, one of our first people who are, on the original committee, and others along the way, Garth Tymason and others, and just from different aspects, different fields. It's just absolutely great. My good friend Dave Gaslak and others who just continue to do great things for kids with disabilities in regards to physical education. So today I get a chance to share a little story, and then Brad, I think you're going to break down more of the criteria for us. So hey, there's Emily, one of my colleagues. I love it. So it's just really cool stuff. So if you'd move the slide forward, we'll get started and try not to do too much slow death by PowerPoint. As many of you know, the Action Seminar started this whole thing. And what a lot of you may not know, I was a graduate student at Cal State Chico, running the Ability First program with my good friend Eric Snedeker at the time. And Luke Kelly was trying to organize the Action Seminar. And my father, a lot of people may not know this, but my father, Smokey Davis, was the executive director of NASD, and he partnered with Special Olympics and with the National Consortium to put on the first ever Action Seminar on Adapted Physical Education, which was focused on what was happening in the gym in regards to physical education. What about kids with disabilities? So that's really what kicked off the whole thing. I came as a graduate student, and I got lucky enough to present after Arnold Schwarzenegger presented on the Ability First program, and I guarantee you I fumbled all over the place. I actually dropped my overheads all over the floor. It was pretty funny. Go ahead, Brad, keep going. From the Action Seminar, though, which was really a powerful piece, because the Action Seminar brought the key players. It brought special ed directors. There were 21 special education state directors that were in attendance at this. And of course, this was a vision by Luke and several others, that there was a critical need to develop a set of standards, a baseline of what an adapted PE teacher needed to know to do their job on a daily basis, right? This was really, really critical information. And the classic response from one of the state directors was like, hey, you got to get PE on our radar screen before we can ever talk about standards, before we can ever do any of these things. And Garth, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Colorado knows what I'm talking about. We have to be advocates for physical education for kids with disabilities and get it out there, because we have these amazing standards that were created obviously back in the day, focused or centered around OSER's special ed or rehab services special projects grant, which was really awesome. We're in our third revision of this textbook. We're going to do a fourth. There's a lot of work to be done here in those standards, and then ultimately with the certification exam and the database that goes on there. For some of you who already know this, there are 4 content domains or areas. We had to break down all of this content because remember, the APENS standards are structured around the first thing, things first. I'm a physical education teacher first. That's what I was trained to do. So the first 3 levels of the standards are focused on what a physical education teacher needs to know about kids with disabilities. Because all 95% of all kids with disabilities are served in general PE already, so we have that 3 credit class. We might have a couple additional credits, but as you know, it's just not enough. So we needed to know what an adapted PE teacher needed to know to do their job on a day-to-day basis. So we created the level 4, which was the understand statement, which is what a teacher should know. And then level 5 statements are those statements that are applied. From that, and a lot of data, and Barry, I'm sure you're laughing at that statement, just a tremendous amount of data that was collected across the country to formulate a 2,500 test item database, which scaled down to about 1,500 items. And now, we have a subset that are about 500 items that we pull from to create the national certification exam. Go ahead, Brad. Our first exam was administered in 1996. Yes, I was a doctoral student, and there was Barry LeVay, there was Willie Gale, Monica Lepore, John Dunn, Mike Luvis, it'll come to me, Jan Seaman. I think I got everybody. Did I get everybody,
Yeah.
Barry?
Yeah.
Excellent. And this was an amazing group of people to sit around and listen to. And of course, I was a doctoral student, so they barked orders at me all day long and told me to do things. But it was an amazing experience to sit through and be a part of that team. And from them, I feel a tremendous responsibility to carry these things forward and to move them forward as best I can in my role as chair as of the APENS project. So click forward. Everything is housed at SUNY Cortland, just so you know. And there are some basic criteria. Brad, let us know about some of that basic criteria since you're a Cortland grad too.
Yeah, before I get into the criteria, I think it's really important for us to know the history of how this came about and the number of people that had to come together to really advocate for our profession. So while the CAPE is there, it's really important to know how everybody came together, got that grant, and put forth a way for us to show that we have that knowledge base and that we are able to serve those students with disabilities. Just like, you know, physical therapists go through their tests and occupational therapists, we have our own. So knowing how a group of people came together through NCPEID and the importance of NCPEID is really important to remember because where we are right now, there's a lot of work that we have to do, and we need to stay together as an organization, as a profession.
Since its beginning, we have about 9,000, a little over 9,000 national CAPES since '96, but I know we can do better. So let's keep pushing that envelope.
I joined in 2004, so I graduated out of college and got my CAPE in 2004, and then have recertified twice, so a couple years out of school. But certainly it's been on every signed document that I've had, and so I get to have those post-nominal letters to show people, hey, I have this knowledge base. But some of the eligibility that I needed to have in order to take that test as a practitioner was to at first have that bachelor's degree. And so like Tim shared, I got my bachelor's from SUNY Cortland in physical education. So I was able to have that. So if you're looking to take the test, you want to make sure that you have that bachelor's in physical education or something equivalent to that. And then have a minimum of 12 semester hour credits addressing those educational needs of individuals with disabilities. 9 of those are specifically in the area of adaptive physical education.
So for example, if you were doing a graduate program and say you started your graduate program with a kinesiology degree, but you finished with an MST in adapted PE, a teaching certificate or teaching license, you would be eligible. So that teaching license becomes critical, and you'll see that in the next criteria. That piece becomes critical to meeting the eligibility criteria. Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, so it's satisfactory completion of a minimum of 9 credits in adaptive physical education coursework, or 3 credits of the coursework in related. So I'm sure, Tim, you get questions about people who have done special education or speech or occupational therapy classes. So of course we have to show that in official college transcripts.
And that's important because we can't do CEUs. You know, they have to be credit bearing courses from an accredited institution. So whether they're undergraduate combined with graduate, doesn't matter, but you've got to complete or have 9 credits in the area of adapted PE with 3, you could be all 12 or 3 credits in a related field.
And so you're going to also want to document your experience and licensure, having a minimum of 200 hours of that documented experience. Typically, you may get this through student teaching, or if you're going through universities, the university may support you in getting those 200 hours in other ways. And then you're going to need that current valid teaching certificate in physical education.
In the application, it documents or shows you how you can document that field experience. And, you know, a lot of people ask about student teaching and or camps such as Camp Abilities or, you know, Ability First Camp or Camp Nugget. Those are all great experiences. And yes, they do count. But at the end of the day, if you've been teaching a year or 2 years, clearly you've met that minimum criteria of 200 hours, even in an inclusive setting. It does not have to be a separate adapted PE setting. And then if you have some additional questions about those experiences, you can just reach out to me, you know, directly.
So there's also the eligibility requirements for higher ed. So you need a graduate degree with documented experience, evidence of either having a major in physical education, adaptive physical education, adaptive physical activity, special education, or a related area, and then a completion of a minimum of 15 credit hours of coursework specifically to adaptive physical education across undergraduate and graduate degrees. You're going to want to record a minimum of 2 years of experience in higher education, and then have evidence of being the instructor of a record for a minimum of 15 credit hours, teaching the area of adaptive physical education and or supervising college, university students in practice.
And we typically document that through your department chair, through your annual review and your annual information that comes in. You know, we don't get a lot of higher ed applications, although we do have PhD students. So we have students who are ABD who, you know, become eligible. But remember, regardless of whether you do the teaching application or whether you do the higher ed application, you still have to sit for the national certification exam.
And so Tim brought up the standards, and so here we have 15 standards that your exam questions would be based through. And so I'll give you a second to kind of read through them. I'm not going to read through every single standard here, but as you can see how they directly relate to what you're doing within teaching.
A couple of things to think about when you're doing this. Let's say you're studying for the exam. You could start with standard 1 and walk right through to standard 15. I like to tell teachers to highlight the information they already know. Highlight the stuff that they know, and then go back and review the things that they may not know or not remember from, you know, an exercise science class or a measurement and evaluation class. But you should also know that the structures and the actual standards were revised in 2020. So make sure you look at the most current standards, because standard 6, for example, was completely rewritten around the categories of the 14 categories under IDEA, which was much different than the original. Exercise science has changed drastically. Of course, Luke could not help himself but to change you know, the curriculum theory and development and measurement and evaluation. So it's kind of fun that, you know, we kind of go back and look, and that we've revised many of these standards and updated the information to be current, not so much with trends, but more with content specific changes that have occurred in the field. I think it's important for people to understand that trends versus content specific changes.
And talking about the studying, I think it will be really important if you can relate the standards to what you're doing. So if you're in the field right now teaching and you're going through the study materials, try to relate what you're reading to what you're doing to help you make that connection, because a lot of the questions are going to be specific in the way that they're written to how you're relating it to your practice.
Yeah, those are those application standard or statements. Those level 5s is the application of that, you know, measurement and value or exercise science. Let's say, you know, children with Down syndrome have heart anomalies. What is the propensity for that to occur? And so, you know, or have AAI, atlantoaxial instability. So these are examples that are disability specific, but also pull in that notion of understanding exercise science.
So speaking a little bit about the exam, it's 100 questions, multiple choice. You have 3 hours. If you don't need the 3 hours, that's okay, but you would have 3 hours, and you do have that computer-based online option. Tim, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely, Brad. So this is good stuff here. You know, on the we actually have it housed on Blackboard right now. This fall it'll shift, but you won't see any differences in the online computer-based application of the exam. There is artificial intelligence that monitors the exam. So if, for example, if you sit down and log in and you say, okay, I'm going to start the exam. I got myself 3 hours. I got something to drink. I'm good to go. I'm ready. I'm focused. Blackboard and the Respondus lockdown browser will automatically turn off your ability to access the internet, and you will focus only on that exam. If you happen to get up and leave, when you come back, if it's been too long, the exam will shut down. If it's been like 15 minutes, the exam will shut down. Or if somebody else sits down and it's not your face, it'll shut down. So if you get up and leave and your spouse comes over and sits down, or your significant other or your child, the computer's going to shut down on you. So make sure you're aware of that when you sit down to do the actual exam. You can always go back and change your answers. You have that 3-hour window to look specifically at the exam, and we encourage you to answer all questions. There's no bonus if if there's no formula for that. It's a 100-item multiple choice, and you get the score, based upon those 100 items. People often ask me, what is the cutoff? What is the pass score? And it often is, based upon the difficulty rating of the exam. So the exam can be anywhere from as low as 65 for a pass to as upwards of 71 for a pass. So that range of score, depending on the actual exam that you sit down and take, it's scored automatically. I get that information from information technology. They send it to me, and then I contact you to let you know whether or not you passed the APENS exam. I think that's it. I think we covered that.
Yep. And if anybody was in need of ADA accommodations, we would be able to provide that. You just have to provide in writing that documentation in writing to the office.
If you need, if they need it online in a different version or different format, we use our Office of Disabled Student Services to help us make any accommodation that needs to be done. And then, of course, just communicating with us about what your needs are, whether it's extended time or a different version, different process, or someone reading to you. We've done just about every accommodation you can imagine to allow people to access the APENS exam.
And then you see the cost is $250 to take the exam. So like I shared a little bit earlier, that I, as somebody that passes the exam, you get to have those post-nominal letters of CAPE, but you also get the certification for 7 years. You will receive 1 year of membership with NCPEID. And as we shared, NCPEID is the leading organization with what we're doing in adaptive physical education. So regardless, it's a great organization to be part of, but you get 1 free year with as a member, and then you'd receive 1 free year of subscription of Palestra, and you'll receive a certificate documenting your accomplishment. So certainly there's a lot of reason to get this certification.
Absolutely. That subscription is an electronic version. But here's something to think about, gang. And I hear this sometimes, and I'm not just going to pick on California, Melissa, and others. I'm just going to say that sometimes people say, well, we don't need it because we already have a state certification. And that's absolutely excellent. That's where we all want to be. But at the end of the day, we don't have that. The vast majority of states do not have language in their state regulations specific to adapted physical education services. And we see this really wide range of ways in which services in physical education are provided or denied kids with disabilities. So that's important for you to understand. It's also important for you to think about the APENS and the national CAPE as being your national voice. You are contributing to a national voice, and that national voice gets to be carried forward with people like the consortium group who goes to Washington, D.C., Susanna Dillon, other people, Garth Tymeson. This is your national content. This is your national voice, and it has the power because they're standards, and we have a large collection of people who have passed this, and we have this baseline of what a qualified person needs to be in order to deliver physical education for children with disabilities. And that's a lever that I don't think we use as often as we should. We should really be promoting that content and really value our content knowledge. Our content is different from that of physical therapy, is different from that of occupational therapy, is different from that of physical education, right? It's unique to what we provide in adapted PE.
So like I shared, I took the exam in 2004, and then 7 years later, I did my recertification. My feeling is that you should start working on this prior to the expiration of your certification. So that you'll recertify. So a year before, you probably want to start getting your materials together, start looking at things. There are two options to recertify. You can retake and pass the APENS exam, or you can submit a portfolio.
You know, Brad, I get questions on this one all the time about what counts, what doesn't, all these things, you know, and I always take a step back and I say, wait a minute, look at the last 7 years and what have you done on a professional development basis, whether it's required through your school, required through your school district. You know, you're doing professional development workshops within your school. Maybe you're doing certifications, anything interdisciplinary, because if you look at the breadth of the APENS standards, it cuts across a wide variety of content. So things that count are certainly interdisciplinary and link to, you know, you being a better physical education teacher for kids within your school. We look for documentation of that. If you're short, if I feel like as I review the portfolio and I have others look at it, if I look at that portfolio and say, wait a minute, it's just not enough, I'll contact you and let you know, hey, can you give us more additional information here or additional information there? On a few occasions, you know, we'll have people retake the exam, but most people go down that road of portfolio. And we have a point system that we use to evaluate your portfolio and look at, you know, your overall experience. And the range, you know, you've got to have 15 points, but a lot of folks, I'm humbled by the amount of work you all do. It's evident that you are passionate about what you do with your kids on a daily basis. I mean, you know, there's a teacher up in Menacing Schools not far from here, Teresa Yuhalski, and she just works every single day to help her kids with disabilities improve. And I see it in this litany of work that she does outside of school. And that's just so impressive to me. And so I sit down, I'll look at that portfolio, and I have others look at it as well. And we go through and just kind of click off these pieces. If you've done some professional development work where you've taken course credit to help, you know, increase your salary, 6 credits will boost your salary in your district, then by all means submit that information as well. You know, the more you can add to these areas, the better off. As you can see, there's a whole host of things here. We certainly like great teachers sharing great information with interns and student teachers. We love it when we see people do presentations. You know, Brad, you know, you're presenting all over the place, and lots of people like yourself and others have done the same thing. And sometimes though, we don't have time to do that. Sometimes we're just locked into our own district and we're coaching and we're providing unified sports, or we're working with Special Olympics and you know, doing some things like that. But it demonstrates that you're dedicated to the field of adapted PE. You've sustained that service, if you will, for many, many years. And like I said, it's when I get a portfolio, it's always humbling. And I try through the newsletter to highlight some of those folks. We highlighted a teacher not too long ago from Michigan who's done an outstanding job. Our national toys, our national adapted PE toys, like Brad and others, are you know, it's really awesome to see. And I think as a profession, you know, if we think of it as a family, we need to celebrate those people in our family who are doing great work.
One of the new additions to getting credits towards a portfolio is that sustained service as an adaptive physical educator. We're feeling that if you are doing that work of going to IEP meetings and developing goals and objectives and doing that work on a daily basis, then that could be part of adding some of the credits. And then for higher education, you can submit that portfolio, and here's some of the things: providing a copy of your CV and supporting materials, such as being a member of this organization, and ongoing teaching in adaptive PE, ongoing engagement in the area of scholarship in adaptive PE, and service to the adaptive physical education profession. So higher ed has that portfolio as well.
Brad, I always think about the PAPTICA model, and some of you know what I'm talking about. Plan, assess, prescribe, teach, evaluate, consult, advocate. This is all about advocacy. Barry, I see you shaking your head. Yeah, the PAPTICA model, right? So that's stuff that came from Cheryl back in the day, and that we all promote. It's about advocacy. It's about sharing our passion, sharing what we do, and, being professional in all of these areas. It's just, I just love this field so much. And I just really applaud my colleagues who have, whether they do research or whether they're practical or whether they do everything in between, it's great stuff. It's great stuff to see.
So there are study guides. We mentioned them a little bit before. And here's some information about those study guides in terms of the book that has a web study guide. And then if you were just looking for the web online study guide alone, you have that option as well. But there are a number of sample test questions that you can go through and practice quizzes with content questions.
Now,
So-
this just so you know is separate from when you log into the APENS exam and you'll have like a little mini quiz there. That little mini quiz is actually designed just to let you know how the questions will come up in Blackboard and how it'll look on the Respondus lockdown browser. So that's not the study guides. And quite honestly, I've had some colleagues who say, hey, this isn't a real study guide. This is just sample test question. That's true. The book is really the study guide. You need to understand the content, and the authors of the textbook, latest round, Susanna Dillon, Wes Wilson, Luke, Hester Henderson. My gosh, Hester. There's a person that, brings family to this whole field. When we think about, this content, it's not, we didn't deliver it in a study guide format, like you should study this content from Winnick or this content from Oxter Pfeiffer or from Christy Roth or some other great authors. Oh, LeVay, yeah, that guy. We shouldn't, it's not about studying that content. It's about looking at that material and then going to the literature and seeking out the content. So our study guide, the language of study guide is really more about sample questions than anything else. Hope that made sense.
Yeah, and they go through the standards and kind of break down the standards in great detail. And then, like mentioned, you're going to want to have maybe Winnick's book or some of the other textbooks around adaptive physical education to refer to as well.
I always tell my students, hey, don't throw away your library. This is your library for your professional, as a professional. And again, the APENS standards cut across everything from exercise science to consultation and psychology and all these other content areas. So you really need to have a library to turn to. If you don't, there are, like Brad said, several texts, but there isn't one text that actually represents all the content. It just doesn't exist. Not one. I think Dunn made a pretty good shot at it there with his book at one time, but there's just so much out there. It cuts across so much content. So at the end of the day, you really need to have a library of resources. Go through the standards, look at the ones hey, I know that. I use that every day. Okay, great. I know that. Oh, this one I've never heard of. What do they mean by, TGMD3? I've never heard of that before. Well, let's hope not. But, or the Brockport Fitness. I've never heard of the Brockport Fitness. What is that? So, those are things that if you've never heard those or used those, then maybe you should go look those up. And one of the things I love to say, I think about a lot, is that whether you pass the exam or not, just simply studying helps you become more knowledgeable. If you're more knowledgeable, you're going to make a better decision about the kids with disabilities you teach in PE on a day-to-day basis. And we want an adapted PE, a nationally certified adapted PE teacher in every school district in the country, which is about, I think 14,000 school districts, and don't quote me on that. I think Garth said that one time. And so, there's a lot of PE teachers out there that are providing services that don't have this content. So if we just study it, you'll be more knowledgeable. We'll do a better job of providing services.
So visiting the apens.com website will allow you to access the materials so that you can apply to take the exam.
Yeah, apens.com will actually take you to the consortium. So, but even if you just typed in APENS, you'll find us. and here's that content that Brad's referring to. Shout out to Mason and Dallas Jackson and others who helped put this website together. Of course, Susanna and others just did a phenomenal job at putting this content from the old website to the new website.
And so you're visiting NCPEID's website, and so they offer a lot of different things that you can look at. But while you're here, if you're here for APENS, you can just highlight the APENS and see a list, and you can drop down to APENS certification. And that would be the initial certification, and then the apply for whichever one you're going to apply for, practitioner or higher ed.
If you're not unsure which one you should apply for, reach out and contact me directly. The vast majority, if you have a master's degree and you're not teaching in higher education, but you're an administrator or you're in a school setting, I'm going to have you take or do that first one, the professional physical education application. But if you are a doctoral student, you are in higher education, you actually provide or teach, your majority of your job is teaching in higher education. Matt Lucas, others did this, doing a great job where he's at in Virginia and really doing some really cool stuff with IEP development. Then higher education would be what you want to do. Also, Matt, Virginia grad, gotta love that. Got to give a shout out to our Virginia grads,
So all the information that we went over today is on that the website. So you can just visit the website and get all the information that we went over today. I showed
Great.
you.
Thanks, Brad. Awesome.
So of course,
That's
like
me.
Tim's been saying, that's it.
Yeah, that's me. And like I said before, it's just reach out to me, my office, my cell, or any of that information. The network of adapted PE teachers that I've been blessed to work with has just been phenomenal. Garth and others, who are now retired know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, whether we're calling Pam Skogson in Alaska, or we're still working with, Christine down in Florida, or we're, wherever we happen to be, Michelle and others all across the country, we're connected, and we're connected not only through APENS and through the CAPE, but, really we're connected through, our passion to work with children with disabilities and provide the best services ever. So that's where we're at. We're ready for questions, Brad?
We're ready for questions.
All right. So it really
All
wasn't
right.
death by PowerPoint.
Go ahead and bounce out, and let's go to the main Zoom screen. What
Hey,
questions?
Emily. All right. We highlighted Emily not too long ago in the newsletter, the CAPE newsletter. Awesome.
Barry, did I see you have a question?
Yeah, I just want a nice presentation, Brad and Tim. And I just want to acknowledge Tim. He's been there since the beginning, and he's the thread that's been with APENS all those years. And he's really contributed to the profession that way. And so I just wanted to mention that. One issue I want to talk a little bit about APENS that I think gets overlooked. When I was fortunate enough to be on the committee to develop the standards, and I was a pretty young professional, it was only like my third or fourth year in higher ed. And so throughout the rest of my career, I basically really, anytime I was putting materials together, syllabus or whatever, I thought about the APENS and the content. And Tim, I'd like your thoughts a little bit about, I think, and this might be a bias on my part, but I think a lot of times it gets overlooked. A lot of the higher ed people could really look at the APENS and the content, especially like 4 and 5, where, hey, am I teaching these things to my university students and preparing them? And I think a lot of times the test is always discussed, but that was one of the original objectives, is that let's have a body of knowledge in adapted PE, because we didn't have that before. But I'm curious,
Exactly.
Tim, like any other thoughts about that?
Certainly speak to that. I can't emphasize enough. So 2 parts to that. One, remember, even if you were teaching methodologies, PET methodologies, basic, elementary ed or secondary ed, turn to the APENS standards, because the first 3 levels are what a physical educator should know about children with disabilities, right? The NASP standards were not written when these were written. So those came out much later, and Brad and others kind of did a nice comparison as of late with standards. And of course, many of you know SHAPE standard, we're in the process of changing the PEID standards. So which standards are you going to look at and use? So I strongly encourage you to consider looking at the standards from that perspective. Now, for those of us in higher education who have programs, if you look at our syllabi have 2 standards. We have the SHAPE standard, the teacher education standard, and then we have the APENS standard. So the APENS standard of what particular standard and what levels does that class or course endorse and or cover. And you'll find if you sit down with this content, and trust me, I've been through the content a lot, as many of you know, there is just not a single program out there that's comprehensive enough to address all of it, right? So it says a lot to me about how valuable our knowledge base, that content base, Barry, you're talking about is and how critical that is. And I think as advocates out in the schools, like Emily, I know you've been to this battle before, going up against your school district to say, hey, this is the content I need to know to do my job, and this is my job, and it's defined here, and this is how it's defined. All those standards support that connection from higher education all the way down into the schools, or not down, but out into the schools, working with Dave's a little guy, working with little guys just like that, right? So good stuff. Thanks, Em.
Renee, do you have a question?
Yeah. Hey, Dr. Davis. My question was just how long after you submit the application to sit for the exam, how long until you hear back if you were accepted to sit for the exam or not?
Thanks, Renee. Great question. And it's been a tough question, tough 6 months for me, because I've been in the process of trying to replace somebody in my office. So sometimes it could be a week, sometimes it's a little longer. All the APENS emails go through Mason, through the National Consortium, and then they trickle over to me and the actual APENS piece. But you can email me or call me directly, and we can get that process going. For some of you, it happened a little quicker than others. And so my apologies for those if it took a little longer to get the information to you. But I do this on a voluntary basis. I try to dedicate the Friday of every week to APENS and replying to APENS emails and APENS calls. And boy, I tell you, sometimes there's a lot, other times it's a little thin. But at the end of the day, you're all very valuable, and I appreciate your patience on getting back. Maybe we can get the consortium board to figure something out there. We can make it a position at some point in time in the future. I don't know. We'll see.
Cool. Thank you.
Great question, Renee. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Other questions?
This is Matt Lucas down in Virginia. Tim, I have a question for y'all. Let's see. I'm trying to think of how to explain it. How often do y'all go through and revise the questions?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. And we're actually in the process of getting the consortium to get another round of revisions going. Typically, in order to do revisions, we reach out to our membership, and we go and have different populations of students and different populations of professionals take subsets or small exams, 10 to 20 questions. We have right now structured 11 exams. Wes Wilson, thank you for all that work back in the day to get that moving. But we're in that process, Matt. And what we're going to be looking for from the consortium is folks in higher education who can help us out in terms of dissemination of those tests so that we can get data back and then go through what we call an NGOF score and scoring process in order to select the test items that actually measure what an adaptive PE teacher should know. And then we get rid of the test items that aren't quality test items.
Okay, thanks. Another thing was, I remember originally when the test started, and then I think about 13 states were recognizing it in some way. What is the number of states that really recognize it?
So actually, in terms of recognition, let me kind of rephrase that. There are about 13 states, and we kind of go back and forth between 13 and 14 states with what states recognize adaptive PE or who have contents in their state language, their state ed documents about adaptive PE. There's a handful of states that actually recognize the CAPE certification. Alaska is one of those. Michigan is one of those. Susanna did a phenomenal job there in Michigan before she left and continues to advocate there. Pam Skogsick continues to advocate in Alaska. We're hoping to get Colorado, Garth, we're hoping to get Colorado to take a look at that, Washington to take a look at that. We've had teachers in California actually have school districts raise their salary because they asked for a letter from the president of the consortium and the chair of APENS to say, listen, we earned this national certification. It's equivalent to a national teacher board. We want that salary increase. Come on, you have to advocate for yourself. And there's a couple teachers, like I said, and Heidi knows this, out in California that did this, and kudos to them. So there's such inconsistency across the country as it relates to not only the service called adapted physical education, the way in which those services are delivered, but more importantly, the way in which we look at a qualified individual to provide those services. So Matt, your question is spot on, and I appreciate it greatly.
Thanks for the answer.
Kristen, you've got a question?
Hi, Kristen Morgan here. I have a question about the higher education faculty CAPE certification. So it says that you need 15 credit hours of college coursework, either undergrad or graduate in adapted physical education. If one doesn't have specifically APE courses, are they ineligible to get the higher education, CAPE? Because some courses that I took weren't necessarily titled like an adapted PE course, but maybe it was like a neurological development course, or maybe it was, more like an assessment-based class that we talked a lot about, like the TGMD theory, that had a lot of APE content, but it wasn't titled on maybe my transcripts as being like an APE course.
Kristen, that's a great question. And the way I'm going to answer this, kind of my own experiences when I went through the doctoral program at UVA, I brought in a lot of public school and practitioner, kind of oriented information. I knew about adaptive PE, at least I thought I did till I met Fluke and Marty. But at the end of the day, it was this idea that, I wanted to create my own doctoral program. And so I was lucky enough to be able to do that. And so having, I was able to go into special education and work with some really amazing people in the field of special ed out of Virginia and do some amazing work in family systems theory and some other things that just made me a better, well-rounded, professor and doctoral candidate. So having said that, yes, we look at content beyond the scope of just this narrow, like adapted PE component, So every application is an individual application, and I'll work with you and look at that content. And I might ask you to send the syllabi or the course description, if we're unsure and we're not, one thing that we do not do is we tend not to count your traditional pedagogy courses like elementary ed, secondary education, PET courses, or motor development or motor behavior. Those are just standard courses that a physical education teacher has to take to become certified. But when we build beyond the scope of that, and we're looking at lifetime physical activity, or we're looking at, really specific advanced motor learning, motor development type stuff, then yeah, there's always room for negotiation and discussion about those credits.
Tim and Brad, what do you think are the biggest challenges for APENS in the future on any level, or not just administration of the test? Just what do you see as some of the future challenges?
Go ahead, Brad.
I think one of the challenges is always getting people to know about APENS and being personally motivated to take the exam, to sit down for the exam.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of advocacy that we need to do to make sure that first people know that APENS is an exam and that there's this national certification. Another thing is then to promote it to administrators and to get administrators to really understand the value of it, just as the same as, again, physical therapy, occupational therapy, or other areas taking in becoming nationally certified in their profession. So certainly, if we can get the administrators to have value, that strengthens our profession as a whole throughout the United States.
I'm gonna chime in on that with a little personal story. I was up in Chico. I was teaching at Paradise High School, and my father, who was the state director of special education for the state of Nevada for 20 years, was the executive director for NASD for many, many years, came to visit. And he went to the school where I was at. He went to the principal, and he asked where Tim was. You know, he's an adaptive PE teacher here. And the principal's response was, he's down the hall and out the door. And I'll never forget that comment that my father made, because it resonates so much with many administrators that I talk to now. Physical education is not on their radar screen. You know, I mentioned this to Garth back in the day. Joe Fisher, an amazing state director for the state of Illinois, at the Action Seminar said, hey, you've got to put physical education on our radar screen in order for us to address it, because it's not. So just like Brad is saying, we need to be advocates and in front of state directors. We need to be in front of superintendents. We need to be in front of chief school officers. We need to go to conferences outside of our little comfort zone called SHAPE and NAHPL and all the others, and, you know, NCPEID. This is our family. We're talking to each other. We need to go to NACE. We need to go to CEC. We need to go to the special ed state conferences and talk to school administrators, because trust me, they're struggling with physical education. I get consultation, you know, I do consultation all over the country, and I know Garth's doing this and a lot of others, Keiki McPeak down in North Carolina. You know, there's an endless amount of work that needs to be done as it relates to advocating for quality physical education. And from what I can gather by the fact that they eat it up as soon as we deliver it, you know, they need this. It's how do we facilitate a way to get it there? The National Consortium has structures, committees that can help get our content in front of school administrators. There's a school, if you're not familiar with it, Brad and others worked on this. Garth worked on the school administrators, what school administrators should know about adaptive PE. That's on the consortium website as a resource. Absolutely excellent. You know, you're presenting at your state conference. You know, it's those types of things that put not only quality PE on the radar screen and what quality physical education looks like for all kids, but it highlights how important our content knowledge is in terms of delivering services. So Barry, to get, you know, to your question specifically, there are different parts of the country that do a much better job than others.
Sure.
Our mission is to raise that bar across the nation.
Right.
And so we need representation in all of these states. So we love it if you went out and did an APENS presentation at your special ed program or at your state CEC conference, any state principal conference, anything like that, that hooks in school administrators.
Any other questions?
I was
All right.
going to throw this out there, Scott. If you're not familiar with Scott, what's his last name? Scott
McNamara.
McNamara?
McNamara. Thank you. Scott McNamara has done a really beautiful job at doing the webinars and his podcasts. And he had a couple where he was talking about how your special education textbooks, right? Special education textbooks don't have the accurate information about adapted physical education in those textbooks. And it's often the last chapter. chapter 18, chapter 19, right? So it's the content that's not there, that isn't highlighted, that needs to be addressed. And you know, again, I did a lecture just recently for a special ed class up the hill here at Cortland, about 60 students, you know, future special education teachers. And I just asked by a show of hands, hey, how many of you loved physical education when you were in school? And I got about 8 hands, about 8, right? And I'm like, oh, that's not good, right? Those are future school administrators. Those are future people who are going to make decisions about physical education. So we need to go to the IEP meeting. We need to advocate from that level all the way up. So PE teachers, go to the IEP meeting. We need to advocate at the state level and present, and we need to let people know how important our content is.
All right.
Melissa, can I
Yeah,
add one quick thing? Because Barry asked about what the what some of our challenges are in the future. And I think one of the things that we have to be super mindful of is that we've seen that reduction in the number of teachers that are going, or students who are pursuing teacher education as a major. And if we see those great students who are really, we know could move forward and go into APE, we need to recruit them and capture them early. If you're out in the field, be open and willing to receive student teachers so that a part of their student teaching experience is in the area of adapted physical education. I think we're going to have a hard time, as there's such a hot market, continuing to recruit high caliber folks to APE when they can get 2 and 3 and 4 job offers upon graduation. And we know that the pipeline is getting smaller for the number of people who would actually come out and be eligible to apply for our graduate positions in APE.
Great points. Yeah.
Hey, kudos to Garth Tymerson to help get Wright's Law information up to date and current in terms of physical education. Go to wrightslaw.com, look up PE, adapted PE. One group that we forgot about to mention here, parents. You got to get information, quality content, quality information in front of parents. Let them know that you're using evidence-based practices like exercise connection. Let them know that you're doing the work that you need to do to make sure that their child is successful in physical education. And, you know, it just, again, it highlights all the good work that we do. So parents, go to parent organizations and present. You know, you got good students, like Susanna said, let's get them out there and get them into quality programs like TWU and all the others. Hey, we got a slew of Cortland grads out there in the world. It's, you know, almost 1,000 PE majors here at Cortland, believe it or not. So got a few kicking around.
Alan, you had a
recruit 'em.
question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Brad, for responding to my text, and Dr. Davis for responding to my emails. Regarding recertification, when you go attend like MAPEC conferences and you attend like workshops within, you know, our field of adapted PE, like, do you need a certificate when you're adding that to the portfolio, or do you just need a copy of like, say they did like a tiny URL like thing to register for, you know, to show that you actually attended those workshops? And like when I do my CPI training for crisis intervention and proper restraints and holds, like, do you need a list from each person, or like, how does that work when you submit that paperwork?
Alan, that's a great question. And typically I rely mostly on your annual report, the information that you give to your school administrator to look at, like APPI, look at your annual review information. Most of that will have exactly that detail that you're talking about. If it doesn't, you should put that in there and highlight that within your portfolio so we can go back and review that. Honestly, I'm not going to pick up the phone and call, you know, whatever program to see if you attended a conference. I trust in your honesty and your depth and reflection of what you put together within your portfolio. You know, we're connected enough to know, you know, where things are and what people are doing.
Okay. And I'm grateful my county and the state of Maryland, we do get reimbursed for being have passed APENS exam and have our CAPE certification. So, and they just upped it $3,000 this year. So it's nice that they're
Beautiful.
finally recognizing this.
Excellent. That's great to hear. Brad, nice work. Way to be a great advocate in Maryland. Do it in Virginia now.
Hey, Melissa, do you think Tim earned, based on his presentation, he earned a couple of days off so he can help his wife with the delivery, or what do you think? Should we vote on that? or-
Absolutely.
Huh?
Yeah, a big thank you again, since we're wrapping up here at 1 o'clock. A big thank you to Tim and Brad for the presentation, much needed. In addition, NCPEID is tossing around the idea of putting together a monthly study group for studying the APENS standards to get ready for upcoming CAPE test. So more information will be coming out soon with regards to a national study group via Zoom that people can jump in and do some gamification, so some games activities to study for the content. Right, Barry? You're jumping in.
Yeah,
That sounds like
yeah.
fun.
Awesome.
But
Your
thank
There's some
favorite,
folks up-
gamification.
Folks up in Washington that's going to need some help with that. Tony Bader and others are doing a phenomenal job up there. Go check her out. Seek her out if you're up at Shape. And I think this is all great stuff, without a doubt. These states are really starting to foster and develop programs where teachers can get those additional credit hours. So we just need for it to take off.
All right. Thanks again, Tim and Brad. Till next time. Bye all.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Great to see everybody. Bye-bye.
Great job.